frustrating a peace deal by bombing in Qatar, Mr. President? Hello. Is the UK still a friend of Israel?
You see some of the cameras running into number 11. I think there should be at least stills photographs taken of that. You'd usually have someone from the UK media side going in to film it as well, but that doesn't seem to be happening on this occasion. I think this visit does come at a time which is particularly tense between UK-Israeli relations. Both sides, prior to this meeting, have not exactly been putting out the sort of warm noises that you tend to get when a head of state comes to visit another country. If anything, quite the opposite. You had Prime Minister's questions today where Sir Keir Starmer said that he was going to be absolutely clear with President Herzog that the UK condemned the strikes that took place earlier in the week by Israel on Hamas leadership, they say, in Qatar. But likewise, you also had a statement put out from President Herzog's team as well, saying that essentially the president would be doing the same, putting his opinions forward to Keir Starmer and essentially putting forward his concern over the stance that the UK has adopted towards Israel. I think you're probably just seeing members of the President's team and entourage heading into number 10 there. And we have been expecting more protests happening outside of Downing Street. There obviously were very big protests around yesterday, but there was only a couple of people out there, really, a couple of Palestinian flags. There wasn't too much going on out there. I think the other factor here that could come up and could cause a degree of tension between the two leaders is the likely recognition by the UK of a Palestinian state, which you sense may well happen in the next couple of weeks. The timetable that was set out by the Prime Minister earlier this year said that essentially if by the end of September in the UN General Assembly a number of conditions hadn't been met by Israel, including agreeing to a ceasefire, including letting aid in as well, then they would end up recognising a Palestinian state. Now, they said, the government, that they would take an opinion on whether those conditions had met closer to the time, but I think any reading of that, or given events yesterday as well in Qatar, would suggest that really those conditions haven't been met, so you probably could see the UK moving towards this. That is another thing that President Herzog's team say that he'll be raising with the Prime Minister, the Israeli viewpoint that represents an endorsement of terror tactics, that essentially that represents Hamas getting a win because of the UK doing something like that. So certainly not your usual sort of friendly diplomatic niceties between these two leaders today. I think you could probably sense that from the handshake moment. Usually there's maybe a more extended sort of warmer smiles, things like that. That seemed like quite a serious greeting as well. I think you would usually expect there as well to be a red carpet out on the front of number 10. Certainly there was a red carpet there when the Palestinian Authority leader Mahmoud Abbas was here earlier in the week. Every time I've been here for other heads of state, you usually do see a red carpet. Now, I don't know whether that's because it's a bit drizzly or wet. I have asked Downing Street if there's anything in that. But, of course, in moments like this, you know, what you see can matter massively in terms of the diplomacy. And I think it's been pretty clear from the noises coming out from both sides that there could be some pretty firm words exchanged between those two leaders when they sit down behind me in number 10 in the next few moments.
Meanwhile, Rob, the Green Party are saying that Isaac Herzog should be arrested. That's not going to happen today, is it?
No, it's not going to happen. There have been sanctions that the UK have taken against members of the Israeli cabinet. That was announced, I think, back in June. I mean, Isaac Herzog obviously sits as president and was not included in those, but he has condemned the sanctions and the talk of more sanctions towards Israel. No, that certainly isn't going to happen. And I think for all of the firm words coming out from number 10, and I think it should be stressed that actually ahead of a visit like this, to have the Prime Minister standing in the Commons and, you know, saying, I will make these quite firm points to this leader when they arrive. That is unusual, but at the same time, what Keir Starmer said was that engagement is still necessary, that diplomacy is still necessary, and his response to the Greens and other protesters that have called for the meeting to be cancelled is to essentially say that is student politics, that you have to talk to people even when you disagree with elements of what they are doing. So there is a balance for Sir Keir Starmer to walk when he sits down there. He doesn't want this to blow up. He doesn't want this to completely break down. He wants to maintain that degree of diplomacy across it all. But at the same time, I think he probably feels from the UK's own policy viewpoint and standpoint at the moment that he has to bring a degree of firmness to those conversations, but also beyond the sort of the foreign policy decision of the UK and standpoint that the UK has at the moment, there are also political considerations here as well. He's coming under huge pressure and has come under huge pressure from members of his own party, from members of the Labour Party, to take a tougher line, to be more muscular with Israel over what is going on in Gaza. So I think in order to sort of reassure critics in his own party, he will want to make sure he kind of walks that line between not having a huge diplomatic implosion on his hands, but also making sure that the signals that are sent out from this meeting go far enough to actually say, look, I didn't just sit down and sort of nod at what the President had to say. I did put the UK's position forward, and I did put over some of the concerns that we have. So it'll be very interesting to read into the language from the readout, the text we get after these meetings that are usually pretty boring, actually, when they come out from these sorts of meetings. I have a feeling this one may be more interesting to read, though.